Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. What started as all things related to brain health and wellness has morphed into largely brain injury health and wellness, with occasional other neurological topics. My mission remains the same, to help you on the path to a healthier brain. So, without further ado, let's get into the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. Today, my guest is Miss Sheila Thelen, if I can speak correctly today, from Vestibular Training Services. And in a minute, I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit. However, this is actually my first on-site recording. And the special thing about this is that it's episode 200. So, we kind of hit some milestones, and I'm super excited for that. So we just got done doing some cool stuff with the gear here. But I do have a little gift for you because it is a 200 episode and my first in person. So my new book, Concussion Help. So we've been talking about that on the show here a little bit. So I have a copy of the new book for her. We talk a little about vestibular. There's a whole couple pages. And, just for funsies, Brain Wellness, the podcast.
Nice.
Look at me here. So there you go. Big gifts because it is episode 200 and we are the first live recording. So super cool, excited. So Sheila, please introduce yourself to our guests here.
Oh my gosh.
Today.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to beat this. This is so good. So I got chaos in the background here too.
Yeah, right.
Hey, so I'm Sheila Thelen and I'm the president and the patent holder. I created Vestibular Training Services. And we spin you, which sounds really weird, but basically we're taking world-class sports figure skating training and bringing it to the general public. And wow, there's your concussion group, and when I first started, I didn't realize how big this group was. And to now be knee deep in it is really, we've learned so much. Our company's learned so much, but our clients, let's talk about outcomes, obsessed with outcomes.
So my first question to my guests is always, tell me a little bit about your background. So you gave me a little bit before we got on the recording, but tell us a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing.
So I come from figure skating. I'm a figure skating coach, which sounds really weird, but I'm a master figure skating coach. And I've worked with everything from young children, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, of thousands of them, all the way through Olympians. So when you see people on TV, they grew up on my figure skating gear. So my figure skating gear is what I've really been involved in the last 30 years of spinning gear, figure skating gear. So when you really look at my work, it looks very figure skating, like very, very figure skating. But 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I started to put together that my athletes could do things that other athletes couldn't. And in short, really, they could spin and not be dizzy. Where other sports, those athletes were dizzy all the time. So my athletes weren't dizzy and mine were super smart and mine were really good decision makers. They didn't make impulsive decisions. Other sports did. So we started to really look at what we were doing differently in figure skating than all the other sports and all the different trainers. And it comes back to spinning. So 11 years ago, I started to become obsessed with vestibular. And when we really started to have anyone that would talk to me, PTs, OTs, doctors, anyone that would give me their time of day of how does spinning affect the brain? That's how we got here today. And it's an honor to see all the outcomes that we're starting to see, not just how these partnerships that we're creating even greater outcomes.
Yeah. So we've got some of the equipment in the background for those watching on video, but we did a little spin test with me a little bit here ago as well. If you could send me that video, I'll include that in the recording too, so we can just kind of see it, especially for those watching on YouTube, because it's kind of fun to be able to see the things. And you've got some really cool stuff in your
Hey, this is Sheila Thelen at Vestibular Training Services. She's so good up there. Okay, so some eye tracking. So this is our second set, and this is hard. Do you want to go just a little slower? Are you okay? Yeah. Do you want to go a little slower? Okay, I'm going to go just a little slower. So going just a nudge slower. There we go. Yeah, that looks really good. Yeah, there's just I'm just trying to not let the client look stressed or overwhelmed. Ooh, that looked really good. A little slower is even easier. The goal is actually slower and longer rather than fast and short. Okay, the kids can do that, but the adults just can't. So we've got eye tracking. We've got that nice midline cross, switch hands. This is really weird. I have a lot of athletes tell me that one finger they could see and one finger they couldn't see. And I'm like, that's interesting. So I get weird data out of my pro athletes. There is a little vibration from the plate kind of coming up your knees and up your ankles, up your head. Really good. So then a lot of times we do head movement at this time. So with the head movement, we'll just do just like one of each real quick. Just real slow up and down. Real slow. And this is so hard for a lot of my people. And real slow. And then we'll do just some left to rights. Real slow. And you can repeat this a lot of times. It's keeping it simple. And then we're going to do one ear down. Can you like tip an ear? Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. I tip the camera because I'm tipping my head here. I move with you, you know. Perfect. And then this last little section, let's just close your eyes. So crisscross your hands. I love that midline cross. Really obsessed with midline crossing. And with the eyes closed, just feeling the zen. So feeling the zen of the vibration from your feet, up your knees, up your hips, right gently up your spinal cord. Gently up your neck. Feel the connection between your brain and your feet and your hands crossed. Feel your elbows. Feel your breathing. Just feel it all connect so nicely. Nice and calm. So now open your eyes and you're going to stop when you come back to me. So I like to give people a nice warning. You're stopping as you come back to me. And this is where, once again, I'm looking for that nystagmus. Stopping. Breathe through. Feel the calm. Feel your brain settle. Feel it all come back to center. Feel that alertness. And I always talk about, I kind of pet your brain as I'm standing here. And people on LinkedIn are like, what? I'm like, no, trust me. You can feel your brain. You can feel that alertness. The giggle. I get so many adult men that giggle on this gear, which, dopamine load. It's so fun. Like, there's something funny about a big dude giggling, but happy, joyful, feel your brain. A nice alertness. Feel your brain. Just feel it all come back to center.
How did all of the equipment come to be?
So in an industry that people fight, like industries fight amongst themselves all the time, especially the sports industry. I'll be honest, like, the group doesn't play nicely. We worked to bring everyone together. And so we did a bunch of really cool projects with Lifetime Fitness and with a lot of trainers around the world to bring projects together. I'm also going to take a second and say, I met some amazing people on LinkedIn. How did you change your career? LinkedIn. Yeah. But that's where I met the head neuroscientist at NASA. And I met a lot of NFL people and NHL people and head trainers like Cal Dietz at the University of Minnesota and the Biooptimization Institute down in Florida and Tanya Yardley at Brain Innovations Network. Wow, the work they're doing. But I met NeuroTracker and NeuroCatch, and I met Axon, and Balance Tracking Systems, and all of those companies really were so nice to work with and good, and we could pre and post test and really show data, which we love data. Like, everyone loves data. But at some point, you got to crunch the data and you got to publish the data and you got to make sure that the athlete understood what happened to them. And I always talk about, athletes, that they don't have the interoception we think they have. So the pre and post data, especially on balance tracking systems and Axon for brain tracking, we could really show outcomes and the athletes beyond what they could even feel.
Yeah. Yeah. What's been your favorite thing, or maybe favorite person or favorite story that you have that really kind of shows how these tools work?
So it's awesome. I have this one, we call him Thor on all my videos. Thor looks like Thor, man. That's a big boy. And he's a world level axe throwing champion. But he came to me concussed and couldn't drive and couldn't sleep and couldn't eat right and he talks about, like, food felt good. He gained 30 pounds just eating. because it felt good.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
how'd you do that? But the lights and the sound and his lack of sense of humor, that's my new big thing on concussion people.
Yeah.
Lacking sense of humor because their brains are slow. So they're just not fast thinking.
Yeah.
And so they've really lost that sense of humor without realizing it. And now to get that back and, and to see him come back and be driving but I still feel like there's so many pieces of concussion. This is where we have to all work together. And that's why I'm so excited to team up with you because like circulation, like oxygen, like all of these pieces become key in both rehabilitation and performance being the same thing.
So one of the things I find in clinic a lot is when I go through my review of systems with patients, it's the entire body that's affected. So every little bit. But vestibular is kind of that one key piece that I see really kind of sticking around longer than some of the other things. And it affects their vision, and it affects their appetite, their physical endurance, all of those different things. So when you get asked, like, what does balance do for somebody? How do you answer that question?
So I got this from Amy Lennox in the UK, and I drag it with me everywhere I go. They're from Vestibular first. They're on there. Yeah. You can just download it and plastic 3D print that. They're so great. So yeah, so the vestibular system runs everything. And I always talk about the brain. The brain runs everything. Duh. Like that's such a duh statement. Because obviously if you don't have your brain, it's not running anything. Like, and it runs your knee and it runs your hip and it runs your back and it runs your bladder system and it runs everything. Your digest, like all the pieces of your life that you see, feel, touch, care about is run by the brain. And this is the entry to it. And I learned recently that the word vestibular comes from vestibule. So vestibule is the entry to your home. Vestibular is the entry to your brain. And so that first round of data that's coming into your brain, it's key. And it's everything. And I talk about the rollout of the education. And people years ago said, well, could you have launched this company 10 years ago? And really, I don't know that I could have because we're still 15 years ahead of everybody because understanding vestibular is step one in the rehabilitation process. Yeah. And understanding how that little teeny tiny thing, the size of my fingernail, is running the project, and it's the key to the car. You really can't start the car without the key. Yeah. You got to unlock the doors. You got to that key gets everything to happen. And that's what your vestibular system is. Yeah. And it's so undertrained. I do laugh at some of the training that people claim are vestibular. Like I watch YouTube videos. I mean, we all do, I watch some LinkedIn videos and I'm like, what? Like, what's that doing for them? I'm a little rude compared to
a little biased.
Yeah, I think mine's better, because I really think what we're doing is on steroids, what I see other people doing. Yeah. I see some really understand people need low level vestibular training, but we're taking low, medium, high, extremely high vestibular training. And it's trainable. It's just like a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are one person. How far does your reach go?
Well, I'm going to tell you worldwide. We're a busy little company. I was talking about we're like a small, medium, large company. We're a small company, and the fact that we can move and we can make decisions, and I just call the ball and go. And we love a project that's a little weird. Okay, so through Tanya Yardley, we're working on some underserved populations, and I'm really excited about that. We're working with some First Nations and Indigenous, and our company is getting to do this. But we have gear worldwide. I have gear in Mumbai. Like really, Mumbai has some of my gear. And so there's all these wonderful projects that we're a part of. But I also go back to, I'm a big fan of teaming up. Yeah. I keep going back to that. But one trainer can use my gear and help 1,000 people. Yeah. In a way that I can't reach out to 1,000 people myself. Yeah. This is where we all team up. And all those specialists have a little different specialty. And so I talk about my oxygen specialists down at Biooptimization Institute. But they're doing work I just can't do, when they're teaming us up with that. I have Kadrick Bloomquist over in Colorado Springs. Oh man, the work he's doing is phenomenal and groundbreaking, especially for military and for PTSD. Wow. What an honor. Yeah. We work with kids, Kids, we're doing a project with the University of Minnesota from the neurourology department, helping kids that don't stay dry at night. once again, part of that whole neurosystem in giving kids confidence back. Like, it's so like, I always talk about all these projects that I'm obsessed with outcomes to the point, I'm sure my family's so sick of me. My family is so sick of me because this is all I want to talk about. It's all I want to talk about.
Yeah. I love data, and it's fuels what we do in medicine for most of what we do. Everybody is always looking for that research-based information. What do you have that's proven in the research? And all those projects you mentioned, they're not just projects, they are research projects. So you mentioned a number to me earlier. How many research projects do you have going right now?
7, 8, 12. There's a bunch I don't even know about, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
Because people only take my protocols and then kind of tweak it. But we were talking about Dr. Schaller over at MAC Concussion Alliance in Delaware, who is applying vestibular train, my gear, with HBOT and hyperbaric work. And once again, oxygen and brain and spinning and vestibular. And his data is stunning to the point he brought in University of Delaware. And that paper is actually due out, like end of September? Like it's soon. Like it's really coming soon. So hopefully we'll have that out soon.
Yeah. And like we mentioned, Dr. Schaller's been on the show before. I think it was probably about a year ago or so. And he just had some phenomenal information to share with the program that they're doing out there. So they're doing some great stuff. And you've paired up with some really amazing people. Which really makes me feel kind of cool that you want to pair up with me too. Because
I know there's so many people out there. There's so much knowledge out there. But there's so much non-knowledge. I'm a little concerned that there's a lot of people that aren't keeping up with this. And so thanks for having me on the show, but thanks for teaming up with me too, because there's brilliance out there, but then there's a lot of, I didn't learn this in college, so I don't want to, there's a lot.
So much has changed in the world of concussion in the last 4 or 5 years even. So when you do like the PubMed searches or whatever searches you're looking for, there's so much in the last few years because things have changed. There was a big gap for like a decade. There really wasn't a whole lot being done. So seeing now that there's more tools coming out, there's more research being done, there are more things that we can do, it gives people hope. And you mentioned that hope word before. What does it mean to you when a client tells you that you've given them hope?
So I'm always horrified because I didn't realize they didn't have hopes and dreams. So one of my favorite clients came back early on in the company and said to me, like, I now have hopes and dreams. And I cried because I was like, I didn't know you didn't have hopes and dreams. And that feeling of I'm never going to get better and this is my life and I am not going to achieve when she's now achieving. I just have to tell you, like all of my clients are just doing really well in their lives and their happiness and their families. And we always talk about the TBI person, but what about their family? And especially as they're aging and now they're not just their family, they're caregivers because the TBI and especially these pro athletes. I mean, their families. And I have a lot of professional athletes' wives bring them to me. So their husbands. So they're A+ women who married A+ professional athletes. She's still an A+, and he's a D-, heading for F. And because of all of these concussions and in our adult lives and outside of the pro industry, left alone to drift. And boy, there's all these stories coming out, but they're not surprising of stories. People are like, we're shocked to hear that professional athlete is homeless. Like that meant, are we really that shocked? Because like he's had 10,000 concussions. You saw that guy in practice and in slow motion and for years and nobody cares, and when you look at the homeless population, it's addiction and it's concussions. Let's talk about domestic violence. Okay. She's had her head slammed up against the wall a couple times a day. No mom kills her 4 children. No mom does that. No. But if you've had thousands of concussions, like there's explanations to this but the intervention has to come forward. And that's where we're excited to be the intervention. So it's just not a lot of talk. Let's talk about doing something.
Yeah.
Let's talk more action.
My gosh. Yeah. So of course, we're talking about brain injury because that's what I talk about all the time. That's what I do all the time. But what other things can you use these tools for?
Well, we also talk about performance and rehabilitation is the same thing. So we're working with everyone with a brain, which sounds funny to say that. Everyone with a brain, we can help you. And that's the challenge of the rollout. Yeah. And Okay, I sit through some business meetings and people are like, oh, you have $1 billion company. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Let's help Mrs. Anderson. I'm kind of concerned about Mrs. Anderson down the street. We talk about my favorite gas station that I go to. I work with the owner's wife, Yes, everyone can team up, and so all your connections. But there's so many people and there's so many teams and military, that we're doing a bunch of amazing military active and vet projects that mean a lot to our company, to the point where renting out our chief medical officer to a lot of these projects to like get things moving. And our worldwide work, we're working in Sydney, Australia, oh my gosh. Andy is doing this amazing work that is changing lives, but it's all over. And I think that's the key and the challenge and the fun, but also the logistical nightmare.
Doing all of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's a whole logistic side to this. It's a lot. And I've had a crash course in logistics, and building things in America and shipping them worldwide and tariffs and taxes and online certifications. And, like all these pieces of when I laid out the company, I'm not sure I realized how hard it was going to be because it's so hard. I think that's the part I love of it too. Like if you said it was going to be easy, I would have been like, someone else can do it. It's going to be impossible. I'm like, sign me up, like something crazy hard. So I feel like it's been a wonderful project and it's really oddly all I care about. That's all I care about. Like, let's be honest.
Is there anything that still puzzles you? Anything that still kind of makes you go,
I still meet people that like it really affects quickly and people that it really affects slowly. So the spinning's like an instant improvement, but keeping that improvement going. Because I just feel like there's so many layers that we still don't understand. And there's times I get outcomes and I'm not quite sure how I got there. Okay. Like I'm blown away by some of my data, especially improving a professional athlete. I shouldn't be able to improve their balance in 10 minutes. And I get significant balance changes. Speed up a pro athlete's brain by 7 to 9 seconds. Wow. Like that's a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That, you're hoisting the cup. That's a great season ahead.
Yeah.
I'm not always sure how much more we're impacting than the obvious, the balance, the cognitive. We talk about the spatial, the sleep. Westside Barbell showed a 72% improvement in sleep. So just improving the sleep factor, how much does that improve their lives? In a way that I don't boy, that's obvious. If I can get you to sleep, the brain will clean itself and you're going to get better.
Yeah.
So how did I help you? I got your nervous system to quiet down and you can sleep. Yay, the power of sleep.
Your brain needs sleep so much. I think people underestimate how much we truly need it. You can do everything else right in your life, and if you're not sleeping well, you're still going to have problems.
And that seems like such an obvious statement. Like I have a whole thing of like the duh statements, and I don't need a paper on that. My favorite one that so many papers been published on is the gut-brain connection.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, duh. If I feed a kid a bunch of McDonald's, they're not going to do well in school because their brains aren't developing.
Right.
Duh. I don't need a paper on that. You got to feed kids healthy food. You got to feed old people healthy food. You got to feed a pro athlete healthy food. Duh.
Yeah.
Do you need a paper on that? Let's get 50,000 papers and 25 years of research. Really? Like the old pyramid, sponsored by a carb company. Carbs are great, really? Let's, sugar and bread. Yeah. Is it really great? So I have a whole thing on, there's so many obvious things that we can do. And once again, teaming up to get that information out there. But a lot of it is like, duh. Concussion people need more help. They need a consistent schedule.
Yeah. So kind of getting back to your thought that you don't know why some of the things works, it reminds me of my friends that work in the functional neurology side of things, because there's a lot of things that they just do that are functions of day-to-day life. And if you tweak your therapy to work on that functional piece, things improve. And Dr. Brandon Allen, he's been on the show a couple times with me. He's a neurological chiropractor. He does some amazing things that I would never have thought to do. And sometimes he has me do these crazy little movements. And we kind of joke that I don't know how the heck they work, but they do.
But they work.
And it was the same kind of thing here, like with my balance testing. So let's talk about that in a second here too.
Balance testing.
Because when we see those changes, how do we answer it? We did something to the brain that the brain wasn't doing before. And we've made a functional change, and that sometimes throws our whole insurance world for a bit, because they want to see the double blind randomized controlled trial to say that yes, this works. But if you can put somebody on a spinning machine and test them before and after and show that they have these improvements, why do you have to do it? Like, you
I
can't
can prove
fake that.
I can show it on outcomes all day long. Like, how many papers do you need?
Yeah.
You know, and I just look at your data, you know, and so this.
So for those not on the video, we'll kind of talk it through. But I'm gonna have Sheila kind of go through my results here.
So I do a whole thing. Okay, going back to that.
Yeah.
Like, people in a wheelchair, and now they're standing. Do I need a paper? I'm looking at it. You know, look, whatever they did worked. Let's try and help more people with what that worked. Yeah. For more people. So when we talk about innovation, that doesn't mean there's 100,000 papers written on it, because it takes time. And then I always talk about getting the nerds paid. Yeah, I want the nerds to get paid. Go get paid, nerds. Okay, but they're delaying the rollout, because the general rule is 17 years. Yeah. Well, do you have 17 years to get better? Does your kid have 17 years to not stay dry at night? Does your mom have 17 years to wait on fall prevention? And there's so much amazing products out there, especially when you team them up. And there's so much new concussion work out there. What's the holdup? And we can sit and say, oh, can I see the data? Well, let's look at the data. Yeah. Okay. So we've got it on, of course, if you're on the Zoom, okay, or you're on YouTube. So what we tested was 20 seconds eyes open, 20 seconds eyes closed on a flat, firm surface using balance tracking systems. Fantastic product. Then there are tons of universities like Balance Tracking Systems. Man, they're a great company. Then we did 20 seconds standing on foam with her eyes open, and 20 seconds eyes closed on the foam. And whew, that's hard. Okay, stand on foam, stand on an unstable surface. And boy, that sensory and vestibular are screaming, because it's a little scary. So what we want to see is how many centimeters she moved pre and post. So we've got her pre-test of how many centimeters she moved, eyes open, eyes closed, on the foam, eyes open, on the foam, eyes closed. And then we spun gently, and we'll add those videos in of gentle spinning on the rail system here. And then we did the post-testing of the balance. You had a little drink of water and a short haul walk, and we tested again. So in the first test, with her eyes open, she moved 18 centimeters and then dropped down to 15 centimeters. So she went from the 31st percentile and jumped up to the 53rd percentile based on your age. So, here's an interesting data thing. How you should score is great with your eyes open, and a lesser score with your eyes closed. Yeah. Some of my concussion people will score opposite. And really bad ADHD kids will also score opposite. Where with their eyes open, they're over-processing and they're exhausted. So we can see it in their balance. Crazy. And then post-test, those numbers will straighten out, which is really interesting. So with her eyes closed on the firm surface, she didn't improve, but it was only 1 centimeter. Yeah. So, okay, whatever. And then with her eyes open, the foam, there was only a 1 centimeter difference. So yeah, whatever. Okay. But then the exciting part is always with her eyes closed on the foam, which is really testing that vestibular system. And wow, once again, that's hard. Yeah. So she went from 72 centimeters down to 50. Okay. Huge, huge, huge change. And so in the end, she went from the 33rd percentile to the 74th percentile. So what? Huge improvement. And the one thing I forgot to circle on here, overall, you dropped 23 centimeters of movement over 80 seconds. So in 80 seconds of testing, you dropped 23 centimeters of movement. That's a lot. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing is page 2 is oddly just as important. And you can kind of see this too, and I'll really describe it. What we're looking at is the ellipses. And how did you move? So we tracked the centimeters of movement. But then the second question is, yes, but how did you move in that movement? And really, I get like 1 or 2 hot scores. And sometimes then you gave me that. Thank you. So the big improvement was actually with her eyes closed, which originally we said wasn't an improvement with your eyes closed on the firm surface. There's a 1 centimeter difference, but really it was so organized actually on both tests. Like, she had a nice, tiny, centered ellipse, really, really good. So in that sense, you scored just beautifully in that whole section and proper movement. with your eyes closed. So that proprioception is really kicking in for you. But the big improvement was actually in her eyes open on the. So these two things that we looked like on page 1, we didn't improve on. We did improve on page 2 on, because she really came to center. So she had kind of a tipped motion here, okay, with her eyes closed on the foam, to a centered motion. So like the ellipse came back to center. So like lots of little things. But the concept, even people are shocked. I'll be at events or conferences and people are like, so you could see her brain working in your feet. Yeah. Yeah, I can. Like I can see brain function in balance.
Yeah.
And it's all tied together in another kind of duh statement kind of way, that I can see your brain improve as your balance improves, but your brain's improving your balance.
Yeah.
And it's all, the brain moves everything.
Yeah.
With a weird sound after that sentence. Because like I'm sure professors don't love me saying that.
Yeah.
Like just duh, it's all tied together.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to like, we pre and post on like anyone that'll play ball. So we've done brain scans, pre and post, with shocking data changes. One of my favorite gentlemen in the pre-test, he has special needs, and his left hemisphere was inactive in the pre-test, and in the post-test, it came up to speed and talked to the other side. So getting hemispheres to connect, midline crossing, all those great midline crossing projects are so important to children, but even once there's an injury.
Yeah. So you mentioned pairing things up. So you've got all sorts of different technologies that can work together. So we can get the pre and the post. And like I said, I love data. I love those numbers that you can say what's going on, because in the concussion world, there's so much subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Even every appointment when I see patients, I have them do the Rivermead post-concussion scale. It's a very subjective score. They say on a scale of 0 to 4, where do they feel these symptoms? You can't prove that. So when you have somebody that's been in a motor vehicle accident, or they have a work comp injury and they want proof, somebody wants proof. These get numbers. You can't mess these up. Like you can't fake these. So I love that there's numbers associated with that, because I'm always looking for something that can give that objective.
Well, and even balance tracking systems. When I send you home with that, it's all stapled together. Yay, staplers. And you go home, but you show your family and you're like, hey, I'm amazed people come back to me a year later and they still have their worksheet. And I'm like, really? Wow. It was important to them and how much they had improved, and they could feel it, but they could show it.
Yeah.
And we always talk about people with good interoception and people that don't, and I'll be honest, there's people that say that spinning didn't help them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite ones, former military, is also convinced the only thing that'll help him is heavy lifting. Heavy lifting. Nothing else. And you know what? I can't convince him any other way. But you know what? That's okay. For sure. Like, is the answer 100%? No, absolutely not. But, the solid 97%, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And my question always to athletes or to injury people is like, well, what else are you doing that's improving you by 23 centimeters? What other intervention do you have? And then they look at me and they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, no, what were the intervention? So many times I feel like when you have cancer, there's a plan. Okay, you're going to get 3 rounds of this and 2 rounds of that, 8 rounds of that. 6 months, we'll know what we're going to do, and then we'll move the plan around. Okay, but so many concussion people, hey, bummer, hope you feel better. That's really hurt yourself, But you go sit in the dark. Why don't you sleep? Not too much though, but get enough, okay, and healthy and get better. Really? Like there's no plan. And people, especially kids. Okay, so now they're not making the team. They're sitting on the bench. They're out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And kid's not going to get a varsity letter because they didn't really play. Man, this is so hard on kids. And that's part of where we teamed up also with the Mac Parkman Foundation, and understanding concussions and even children in sports and military. And the Mac Parkman Foundation is founded in tragedy, and their tragedy, can we help more kids to not have that tragedy continue? I wanted to settle down a little bit. And I go back to, I'm not a doctor, so like really, I do need a doctor's release if it's a serious concussion. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times I see people 2, 3, 4, 10 years after, and they're still dealing with it. And so can we reset that, and can we reset the brain? And there's my lesson. I always talk about the lessons I've learned is I've met people that I look at and I think, oh, they'll never get better. And that's a bad attitude. But like, I look at him like, oh man, you're never going to get better. And I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm so wrong. One more time, I'm super wrong because everyone can get better.
Yeah.
Everyone can improve.
Yeah. Our brains are never stagnant.
Absolutely.
So that neuroplasticity can happen at any point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long does it take to work with somebody? Is there like a certain time frame? Perfect length?
So my goal is you graduate from me. Yeah. My goal is you get better and you leave me. You know, like, oh, she's gone. We never saw them again. You know, that's really the goal. Yet the older people get, the longer they stay with me. Sure. So I have a lot of kids that are in and out. You know, they're here for a couple of months and then they're gone. Feel better, off we go. That still hang. I'm like, wow, you could graduate, you could leave, and they're like, no, I like it here. You know, no, maybe it's just me. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. So, but they really connect their success to their intervention, and they don't want to stop. You know, which makes sense. Yeah. And I also talk about stopping, and my favorite example is Michael Phelps, the swimmer, who kind of quit cold turkey after all these accolades and all this achievement. What was feeding his brain through all this training was the dopamine and the training, and he enjoyed it and the challenge and how he trained. And so for pro athletes to leave their sport is crushing. Like, boy, the transition even to college, or the transition out of college, or the transition out of pro sports into the general public. You know, oh man, no one's clapping for you. The trash, you know. So I have a whole thing on they lack dopamine, and that's when they make poor choices.
Yeah.
And we see it in the news all the time. But I'm always like, there's a reason they're making these bad choices.
Yeah.
Well, there's good old LinkedIn. I love me some LinkedIn. Yeah. I love LinkedIn. So Vestibular Training Services is on LinkedIn, but of course we've got a Facebook and an Instagram page, which is very little effort put into. Oh, they barely post. Yeah, we post occasionally, whatever. Not a lot of effort. But then, of course, there's our website, spinyourbrain.com, which is easy. Spinyourbrain.com, which has tons of videos. It's a great website, a lot of data. There's also a whole section with hundreds of academic papers. But then I also enjoy that people go hit good old PubMed.gov, look up vestibular plus what you want. So vestibular plus concussions, vestibular plus aging, vestibular plus fall prevention, vestibular plus autism, vestibular plus sleep. You know, just go nuts. And there's tens and thousands of papers, and they're out there. So go do some of your own research, and you're going to learn to spell vestibular, especially when it stops working. So I have a whole thing on, when I named the company Vestibular Training Services, my husband was like, don't. No, the people can't spell that. I'm like, yeah, but I learned to spell archaeology when I took an archaeology class. You learn to spell when you have to.
When you need it.
When you need it, you learn to Google vestibular and you're going to learn to spell it. Yeah. Yeah, we're really good at it.
Very true. And I will include all of those show notes in all those links in the show notes so that people can find you and they don't have to write it down while they're driving. So hopefully they haven't been trying to do all of those things. But in our final moments here, as we're wrapping up, is there any last little bits of wisdom, little bits that you would like to share with the listeners?
There's so many things out there, and maybe it's not mine for you, but there's so many wonderful organizations out there that are there to help you. And you just have to reach out, you know, and maybe it takes the family to help you to reach out, like your support, your family. It's so important. But like, there's so much great work out there in interventions and specialists and people that can really, really help. And but you got to take that step. You got to just like anything, like if you're struggling, you need help, then go get that help. You know, there's so much out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. Again, episode 200, it's a special one. So this might be one that if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or whatever, you're going to want to go look at the video as well. So you can catch those little pieces where we showed the images. Sheila's just got my merch here. So
it's awesome. Such good merch. Go get it.
So thank you again so much, Sheila, for your time today. It's been great to learn about the tools, your programs, and all the things.
Come spin with me.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and share it so that others can benefit. Please also consider supporting the show by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. You can also go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to catch the latest info and get links on all of the social medias there. See you next time.